we're actually going to do some comparisons, uh, which is good to do here because I think a lot of the times people will be listening. They haven't heard of maybe some of the small school prospects or the sleeper prospects that we're mentioning. So we decided, hey, let's compare it to a guy who's currently in the NFL right now. And that gives you a better idea of what this guy's skill set is and what he might be able to do at the next level. So Emery, we're going to start with you on this. Looks like, give me what you got.
Well, and comparisons are key because it helps people kind of figure out what kind of player the guy is, right? And everyone wants to compare everyone to greats, and because that's easy to identify. But when you compare them to people that guys see every day, it makes it a little bit more reasonable, realistic, and sense. So if you like Brandon Strange, the tight end out of Penn State that's with Jacksonville, you'll like Owen Glascoe out of Long Island. Now, here's the thing. He also was at Penn State before he transferred to LIU. So there's some lineage there. But this dude is super athletic and is always around the football and is always able to do things differently with the football. He started the game against Stonehill at quarterback. So he's played quarterback in terms of like quarterback power and zone read, but technically he started the game as a quarterback against Stonehill, had a 12-yard QB power. Inside the red zone, he's been a monster there, both as a receiver and also as a Wildcat quarterback. So you expand your playbook. If I'm the NFL, I don't let Andy Reid get his hands on him. I don't let Sean Payton get his hands on him because he's going to be a versatile weapon for that offense. He can play H-back. He can play tight end. He can win above the rim. Had a great college gridiron showcase where he was just, baking these defensive backs and linebackers in one-on-ones. And inside the red zone has 9 rushing touchdowns. So this is someone, if you like the athleticism and the movement skills of Brandon Strange, you'll love the kid coming out of LIU.
I love you telling NFL teams not to let Sean Payton get his hands on him because there's nothing we know that Sean Payton loves more than a versatile tight end. Of course, Taysom Hill down in New Orleans. I'm sure Payton's on the phone with someone trying to make a trade for him right now. Yeah, it would be great to see someone from Long Island. Again, this is just Emery is great at finding these obscure schools who could end up producing solid NFL players. Of course, Brandon Strange, second-round pick with Jacksonville last season in 2023. All right, Josh, let's get to your first comparison.
Yeah, and first of all, we're starting to notice a little bit of a trend with former Penn State tight ends going on to different institutions and then carving their own path to the NFL. We saw Zach Kuntz out of Old Dominion. Was it last year or 2 years ago? Tested off the charts. Was one of the best athletic testers at the tight end position. So obviously Penn State's churning out athletes at not just the safety and edge rusher positions that we commonly talk about with them, but also tight end. Mine is Cole Burgess, a wide receiver out of SUNY Cortland. And he, to me, he's like a discount Jackson Smith and Jigba, somebody that's very savvy route runner, just knows how to get in and out of his releases, great feel for the sideline, somebody that has really great awareness for spatial, awareness in coverage, in zone coverage. So he knows how to attack zone defenses. I think he's going to be able to carve out a role at the next level. And he tested really well this offseason as well. He showed up at Buffalo's Pro Day. He showed up at Syracuse's Pro Day. So this is a guy that has set out to make a name for himself. But 5'11", 196 pounds, 4.46 in the 40-yard dash, 1.43 10-yard split. So you see that top end speed. You see the acceleration a little bit. 41.5-inch vertical jump and an 11-foot 5-inch broad jump. So would have been one of the better testers at the wide receiver position had he been invited to the NFL Combine. But nonetheless, I think a name that fans really need to pay attention to is somebody that could get in there on day 3.
And that is SUNY Cortland's D3, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be pretty wild to get a D3 player up in there drafted as a former backup punter at a Division III college. Shout out Hanover. Always love when a D3 guy gets drafted. All right, let's go back to Emery. Who you got for us, Emery?
Well, this is kind of, help is a situation where a player that had success that helps out the next guy, right? It's almost like when Randy Moss burst onto the scene in the NFL. Everyone went out and tried to find a 6'5" slim guy that played receiver and compared him to Randy Moss, right? Oh, and Vic went off. Oh, let's go find an athletic quarterback and call him the next Vic and just let him play quarterback, right? Well, last year, Keaton Mitchell's emergence is showing everybody that, hey, size is not a skill, which I've been on the record of saying that, for a decade plus. So now they're looking at, okay, this guy can impact the game with his speed. Man, we can use a guy like Keaton Mitchell. Well, lo and behold, there's a bunch of Keaton Mitchells in this class, but the guy I think that really will benefit from Keaton Mitchell was at the Combine, was at the East-West Shrine Bowl, and I was on the broadcast for 11 of his games over the last 3 seasons, and that's Jaden Shirden out of Monmouth. Every time I called the game, it was like, this dude's going to go 80. And legitimately, you were leaving a game with at least a 65-plus yard touchdown run because all he needs is a sliver of space, and he's gone. And he was toting the rock there at Monmouth. He was carrying the ball 25 times, right? They barely threw it to him. So that's where he's going to have to grow his game as a pro, as a receiver. But as a runner, give this dude a lane, and he's 88 and out the gate. And it's fascinating because he ran 4.4, which is fast, super fast, but he plays faster. Now, the reason why I brought up Keaton Mitchell is because Shirden measured in at 5'7", 190. People will say, oh, he's small. He's going to, they're going to hurt him. Like, you can't hit what you can't catch. You can't hurt what you can't touch. And when you got that type of ability, that's the type of guy that you want. He won't have to touch the ball 25 times in the NFL. It won't take that much for him to make the impact. So that's the guy that you want to get if you're looking at a Keaton Mitchell type prototype.
Yeah, and I do think that a good point about bringing up his height is sometimes teams will be afraid of that, and somebody like that will fall in the draft because they're thinking, I don't want to draft a guy who's 5'7" or 5'8" or 5'9", especially a running back who's going to be taking all these hits. But as Emery said, you can dance around, and the way you move, and you're kind of the lightning type running back, you're not going to take a bunch of huge hits. And we saw Keaton Mitchell obviously have a pretty solid season last year. We've seen small guys thrive. I mean, we saw the Cowboys with Deuce Vaughn. Darren Sproles put together a pretty solid NFL career. He was only 5'6". So yeah, these short guys, and as a short guy, I love seeing other short guys succeed. Josh, you are taller than me. Why don't you give us your next comparison?
So my next comparison is at Albany. Albany has produced some good pass rushers recently. Jared Verse made the transition to Florida State, now is projected to be a first-round pick. But do not sleep on A.J. Simon from Albany either, because he's a very talented pass rusher. I compared him to kind of a Carl Lawson in the way that he's used. He's powerful. He does a good job of setting the edge. He's got good quickness. Didn't test as well as I thought he would. But what you need to see is what you can see when you watch his tape, because he is fantastic. He gets off the ball, he gets upfield, and he's threatening the passer all day. What I like about this part of the process is as we get closer to the draft, some of the people in the NFL, they start reaching out to you. They're saying, hey, maybe this guy is somebody you should take a look at here before we get to draft day. And Simon was one of those players because he gets off the ball so well. And I think he's going to be able to carve out a role for himself at the next level. Let's see. He's got good waist bend at the high side of his rush, so he's able to flatten, get after the quarterback. You really see everything that you need to see as far as a player that can provide some pass rush specific traits while still developing into some other areas of his game. So I think this is a guy that's going to potentially go higher on day 3 than the first guy I talked about, Cole Burgess, and really find himself a roster spot for the coming season.
Let me ask you this, Josh. Is there any specific team you feel like where you think, man, if he lands there, that's the perfect spot? Maybe it's playing behind someone for a year, maybe just getting in a good rotation with experienced players. Any team you would like to see him land on?
I think the Jets could be a good fit for him. I mean, you look at what they did with Bryce Huff. Now you've got Hassan Reddick coming over. Reddick is getting a little bit older. Philadelphia made the decision to move on from him, so there's no reason to think that New York may not do the same. I don't know how they feel about Will McDonald IV, so that could be an opportunity for him to fill out some depth there. Detroit had, I think, a similar sawed-off type pass rusher with James Houston, who was able to, make a nice living for himself as a rookie and fill a role for that team. So there's going to be some teams around the league that have an interest for that type of player that's not necessarily going to play every down for you initially, but somebody that can be in there on pass rushing downs and get after the quarterback.
And Emery, I should have asked you that with Jaden Shirden, since we love the small guys. Any landing spot you would love to see him go to?
Houston. I think Houston would be perfect. You know what I'm saying? When you're thinking about what they had in Devin Singletary, now he's gone. And now you got Mixon, you got Damian Pierce as a kickoff guy, but you need someone that could be that explosive change of pace back that comes in when everyone's tired and he still's, at 98% battery life, right? And he can still explode. And I will just say about the Albany rusher Simon, his teammate Anton Kunjaj just into the transfer portal. He was just as good as Simon was. He's going to go to an FBS program because go and watch the Morgan State game, which I was the color analyst on in the torrential downpour. Those two dudes wreaked havoc on Morgan State's pocket. And they are Albany has a fantastic program up there. Their quarterback just transferred down south as well. Poffenberger. I think I forgot what school in Florida he's going to, but they were really good last year.
It's crazy when you talk about one smaller school, just keep it. I mean, they have to be able to recruit like crazy. They just keep bringing in these skilled kids and really finding these guys under rocks because, FBS schools aren't finding them. And then these schools turn into proving grounds and send these guys up to FBS schools. All right, Emery, you got one more comparison here.
Yeah. And this was because obviously we've been in TV. We know throughout the production meetings, no one has ever said to one of us, hey, do this for clicks, right? So this may be the first time I'm doing something for clicks, just to draw people to the attention of the player that I'm talking about. And he kind of plays like the guy anyway. But if you like Puka Nacua, that's going to go viral. Then you'll love Kyle Sheets of Slippery Rock. Sheets is about 6'3", right on the nose, 222 pounds, ran high 4.4, low 4.5 at the Temple Pro Day. And this is someone that is a legit vertical threat. He is able to win off the line of scrimmage. He is able to stack the defensive back, which means he doesn't lose position in terms of staying in front of him, thus creating separation while he's tracking the ball, which he does exceptionally well. And he's able to catch the football over his shoulders, equally as impressive as he is through contact. At the College Gridiron Showcase, he had a fantastic week of work against FBS corners. So you saw the Division II jump up from the PSAC translated out there on the field. Now, here's the other thing, too. He had just came off of an injury. This is probably about week 4 or 5. And I just casually, this was after I called the game, so I casually tuned in to a Slippery Rock game because I had heard of Kyle Sheets all throughout the summer, right? And I had tweeted out about him, watched some film or whatnot, but let me just check in, see what he's doing. This was his first game back. And the first time they got the ball on offense, they took a deep shot to Kyle Sheets' touchdown. Like, he had just quickly beat the DB off the line of scrimmage and was gone. So you factor in someone that's 6'2", 6'3", about 222, can play inside or outside. It doesn't take you long to see like this dude can have some success. Kind of like a Ben Skoranek. I know Skoranek is sort of the tight end as opposed to what he was at Notre Dame. But you see what I'm saying? When you think about Puka Nacua, you think about Skoranek, you think about all these guys that kind of fit what the Rams do. If you told me Kyle Sheets was going to the Rams, I said, yeah, that make a ton of sense because he kind of fits what they look for at the position. Could also see him going to Pittsburgh too.
Yeah, Sean McVay's probably on the phone with Sheets' agent saying, hey, look, man, if you don't get drafted, we'll give you whatever you want in the undrafted round. But he won't go undrafted. It sounds like, I think he had 17 touchdowns looking at his stats earlier. I mean, he really had a solid year, had 4 or 5, maybe 6 games over 100 yards. It was one of the good. I just saw that he went to Slippery Rock. And that's one of those schools I feel like everyone's heard of, but they don't know what level it is. It's Division II, and then they don't know where it is. It's in Pennsylvania. But yeah, Kyle Sheets seems like he could end up being just a diamond in the rough in this draft. All right, Josh, you have one more? You have one more comparison here? Or am I crazy?
I've got one more, and Kyle Sheets is a name that I've heard a few places too, so that's a really good one. I actually haven't watched him yet, so I'm over here taking notes as Emery's talking, doing a little bit of homework for myself. But the last name that I have is Alex Gubner, the defensive tackle from Montana. And if you love Malcolm Roach, the longtime NFL defensive tackle, you'll love Gubner. A guy that's 6'2.5", 294 pounds, does a lot of slanting for the Grizzlies, but he gets upfield quickly. Pad level gets a little bit too high sometimes, but when you see what he did at his pro day here in the past month, he ran a 4.82 in the 40-yard dash, 1.68 10-yard split. So he's getting upfield quickly, impact in the backfield, somebody that made a lot of plays for that Grizzlies. what's really interesting, this is an anecdote I've shared in multiple places. I don't think it necessarily applies to his NFL future, but it's worth saying nonetheless. As a freshman in 2019, he had 4 interceptions. Yeah, he's a freshman defensive tackle. He was second in the Big Sky with 4 interceptions. So don't necessarily know that translates to the NFL, other than knowing if the ball is up in the air, he's somebody that's a threat to go get it. But one of the more interesting anecdotes that I've uncovered throughout this draft process thus far.
Yeah, and Montana is a good school. I mean, they were the national title game and the FCS this year. I think they lost to South Dakota State. So you play solid competition. We've seen some good players come out of the FCS level.